Tonight, defiance and dissent, the spread of campus unrest in Canada and the U.S.
United, we'll never be defeated.
McGill's new ultimatum to pro-Palestinian protesters.
You're joking me.
As some American students get suspended or arrested. A search for answers after a trip to the emergency room ends in tragedy.
I would like an investigation into why he was left alone.
Plus, no warning. Outrage from MPs who weren't told they were targeted by China.
It is unacceptable that we were not informed about this.
Also bringing the effects of the solar eclipse into focus.
There's a fascination element to it and can't help but look.
And if walls could talk.
What we're trying to do is find archaeological remains.
The hunt for a hidden history in Halifax.
That stirs the imagination.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Tensions are mounting tonight on the campus of one of Canada's best-known universities over a conflict thousands of kilometers away. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators at Montreal's McGill University, joining a wave of student demonstrations across the United States, are taking a defiant stand, saying they have no intention of dismantling their camp. And this evening, McGill said, while there are efforts to de-escalate, should the situation evolve further, we will have a duty to request police support. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin on the clash.
Free, free Palestine!
Chants grew louder and the encampment grew larger on McGill University campus. And despite warnings today from officials to disperse, protesters are determined to stand their ground.
We will defend the encampment. We believe it is our right to be doing this, and we will stay until the demands are met.
The encampment went up Saturday, joining pro-Palestinian protests on campuses across the U.S., demanding universities divest from companies with business ties to Israel, including, say demonstrators, those making weapons used in Gaza.
I am very passionate about making sure that people have their human rights respected.
But today, McGill issued a statement warning these stands violate the university's policies and the law. It also said discussions with protesters had failed. We saw evidence of appalling anti-Semitic rhetoric and behaviors from some at the encampment, says the university, which now includes many people from outside McGill. We cannot and will not tolerate this. It's not clear exactly what McGill was pointing to. But CTV received this video from someone claiming it was filmed on Sunday at the encampment. And a Jewish student who feared being identified says she was intimidated when she approached protesters to talk.
And we were met with intimidation. We were told to go back to where we came from. We were told that we were terrorists.
Some demanded swift action as exams wrap up on campus. But organizers say the protests are peaceful. And while they braced for a call from the university for police to move in and dismantle the encampment all day, they say public pressure slowed that effort.
More people came out today. I know I came out today because of concerns about the police acting against the encampment.
McGill says it is following protocol and that it is trying to come to an agreement, but says there may come a time when it is, quote, its duty to call police. Omar.
Geneviève Beauchemin at Montreal's McGill University. At some American universities, they have already called in police, leading to more arrests today as protests over the Israel-Hamas war expanded. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on the Campus Crackdown.
In Austin at the University of Texas, state police in riot gear moved in to break up pro-Palestinian protesters who locked arms trying to barricade themselves, arrested one by one. The Texas governor shut it down, posting on social media, no encampments will be allowed. Instead, arrests are being made. A different approach at New York's Columbia University. Students there are being suspended for defying the university's demand to voluntarily leave their protest encampment.
They will not be moved. We demand divestment. We will not be moved unless by force.
determined to use their voices to pressure universities to cut financial ties with companies who do business with Israel. Protests across America are heating up. Schools say it's making campuses unsafe. Some Jewish students feel unwelcome or worse after some demonstrations have turned ugly. Fights breaking out, groups clashing on campus. This student banned from Columbia for this.
Let alone Zionists don't deserve to live.
He has since apologized. Overnight, students in Washington tore down police barricades, refusing to leave. Instead, the protest only grew.
So I've never felt as safe as a Jew than I have felt on this encampment. We're sick of seeing this genocide happen and not being able to do anything about it.
With exams and graduation weeks away, ready to risk it all.
What's going to affect my future even more is a society that allows genocide to unfold in front of our eyes.
These polarizing protests haven't been seen on campuses for decades. Students, many now of voting age, are determined to pressure not just their schools, but the White House to do more to end the war in Gaza. Omar?
All right, Joy, thanks. And pro-Palestinian protests have now extended to a campus on Canada's west coast. Demonstrators have set up camp at the University of British Columbia. The province's premier said that while it is a place of free speech, students of all backgrounds should feel safe. He also denounced remarks made on Friday when a demonstrator in Vancouver praised the October 7th attack at a rally.
This is the most hateful speech I can imagine, celebrating the murder, the rape of innocent people.
In the Middle East, Israeli airstrikes killed 40 Palestinians in Gaza, according to authorities there, as a new round of ceasefire talks resumed in Cairo.
They have to decide, and they have to decide quickly.
The U.S. and Britain are both urging Hamas to accept the proposal, which reportedly includes the release of approximately a third of the 130 hostages still held captive in exchange for freeing Palestinians jailed in Israel and a, quote, period of sustained calm. No calm in Charlotte, North Carolina today. 3 police officers were fatally shot while serving a search warrant. 5 others were wounded. Video streamed live on social media captured the terrifying moments as gunfire erupted. Police say there were multiple shooters, with one of the suspects fatally shot.
Today we lost some heroes that are out to just simply trying to keep our community safe.
Local schools went temporarily into lockdown and many surrounding streets were closed off. An Ontario widow is demanding an inquest into the death of her husband, who spent more than 24 hours waiting for emergency care for a life-threatening condition. According to the Canadian Medical Association, patients in the province are now waiting 22 hours in the ER for a hospital bed. As CTV's medical correspondent Avis Favreau reports, it's yet another symptom of a system under strain.
An ambulance took David Lippert to hospital in March of 2023 after the 68-year-old executive awoke feeling weak, unable to walk. How he died in ER some 24 hours later, having bled internally to death, apparently alone, weighs heavily on his widow.
It's his worst nightmare to die in the ER. And I just wanted him to be in a place where I thought he was safe, thought he was monitored.
She describes the ER at St. Mary's Hospital in Kitchener as chaotic, appearing to be short-staffed, filled with waiting patients lining the halls, while doctors and nurses, she said, did their best.
They were running around like crazy. Like, I don't know how you would even maintain that as your career for any length of time.
Doctors found Lippert was dangerously anemic with a suspected gastrointestinal bleed. He was given blood transfusions and later was waiting for a bed upstairs. But at 7:30 the next morning, still in ER, he was found having vomited blood and in cardiac arrest. Doctors revived him. Later, he was pronounced dead.
Right, which would be.
After spending almost a year getting the medical records, Lisbeth Lippert says there are no signs that anyone checked on him for 6 hours until his heart had already stopped.
I would like an investigation into why he was left alone. Yes, I would.
In a statement, the hospital says that while officials can't comment on the case, we offer our condolences to the family and encourage them to reach out directly to our patient relations team. Doctors say Lippert's case raises questions about the continuing crisis and emergency and support the idea of an investigation.
I think it happens a lot in a lot of hospitals, and I think the frontline staff are just having a hard time keeping up. We don't have the capacity anymore in the system to deal with what we're dealing with.
Coincidentally, Canada's emergency physicians are holding a meeting starting Tuesday with provincial leaders, raising questions like those in this case and hoping to ease the pressure on Canada's ER system. Omar?
All right, Davis, thank you. Canada's Public Health Agency is warning that norovirus is spreading at a higher frequency than expected, especially in Ontario and Alberta. It says the number of cases has been higher than the previous 5-year historical average. Common symptoms of the highly contagious virus include nausea, vomiting, cramps, and diarrhea. In a world first, Canada is mandating that individual king-size cigarettes about a centimeter longer than regular ones carry one of 6 new warnings, and manufacturers will be required to comply as of tomorrow. Poison in every puff will be one of the 6 new warnings required on the filter portion. The rule for regular-sized cigarettes comes into effect in January. One of Western Canada's largest pharmacy chains remained closed today. CTV's Heather Wright on what triggered the shutdown and the investigation.
The doors are closed at all London drugstores today. Signs posted outside nearly 80 locations across Western Canada after the company was hit by a cyber attack.
Doesn't make me feel very confident. And
London Drugs says it temporarily shut down its stores out of an abundance of caution. Pharmacies are open for urgent prescriptions, but phone lines are also down, so people have to go to the store to get anything filled.
This is as bad as it gets.
While the company says it has no evidence customer or employee data was compromised, technology expert Carmi Levy says data is typically always the target in these types of breaches.
This is playing out exactly like a classic ransomware attack always plays out, and the data is the target. That's the value for cyber criminals. They go after this information, they extort or try to extort huge amounts of money.
London Drugs says it has brought in outside experts to help contain the incident and to investigate what happened.
Well, if it was a classic just theft of information, you wouldn't see the stores closed. So when you see this kind of containment activity happen, it means that there's a threat that the operations and ongoing viability and integrity, confidentiality and availability of the systems and information is in jeopardy.
There has been a surge in cyber attacks so far this year in Canada, from government agencies to retailers, even small municipalities. In this case, London Drugs says it has no timeline for when things might be restored. Omar.
Heather Wright in Toronto, thanks. Where a major police investigation into so-called synthetic identity fraud has resulted in a dozen arrests and more than 100 charges.
Synthetic identities can be used to create essentially piggy banks for them. They're applying for credit cards. They're applying for lines of credit. They're opening bank accounts in which they can funnel money in and out of.
It all starts with the use of false information to create fake IDs to open bank accounts. So far, police have uncovered 700 fraudulent identities. A group of Canadian parliamentarians is questioning why Canadian security officials did not tell them they were the target of Beijing-linked hackers and that the information came from the FBI. CTV's Michael Couture explains.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc brushed off questions from reporters about a China-backed group hacking parliamentarians' emails. But in the House of Commons, those targeted wanted answers.
It's unacceptable that we were not informed about this following another incident where a member of Parliament was targeted by the PRC and not informed about it.
It's believed the attack was conducted by a Chinese group known as Advanced Persistent Threat 31, or APT 31. According to the unsealed U.S. Department of Justice documents, around January 2021, the hackers sent more than 1,000 emails to more than 400 unique accounts of individuals associated with the Interparliamentary Alliance on China.
I run probably 150, 200 emails a day. The people who communicate with me should have, if you will, the security of knowing that those emails are are as safe could be.
In a statement to CTV News, the RCMP said, "We're working closely with our domestic and international partners to take a multi-pronged approach and share as much information as possible." Now, it's believed the FBI did inform their counterparts in other countries. However, the MPs and senators didn't learn they had been targeted until years later.
One of the issues could be in relationship to the actual investigation of the FBI at the time, what they were willing to share and what caveats they put on the information that they did share with the Canadian intelligence community.
A statement from a spokesperson for the Public Safety Minister points to the Commission on Foreign Interference as a way to fully understand the threat to Canada so that the government can better protect democratic institutions. The interim report from that commission is expected to be released on Friday. Omar?
All right, Mike, thanks. International students will be allowed to work 24 hours a week off campus starting in September. The Liberals temporarily waived the 20-hour cap during the pandemic to ease labor shortages. That waiver, which allowed foreign students to work as much as 40 hours, expires tomorrow. Coming up.
Obviously, it's hard when you're in the moment. Everybody can make a mistake and get some exposure.
The harmful after effects of a captivating celestial event, plus the present-day hunt in Halifax to connect with a piece of the past. A parking mishap led to emergency crews fishing out a car out of Lake Ontario this morning. The incident happened just before 3 at the boat launch at a park in Toronto. Police say the driver got out of the vehicle but left it running and forgot to put it in park. The car ended up rolling into the water. No one else was in the vehicle at the time and no injuries reported. For tens of thousands, the solar eclipse this month was a moment they will never forget. But now there are reports of more than 100 cases of people with eye complications, all from staring at the sun for just a few seconds without adequate protection. Here's CTV's Heather Butts.
The total solar eclipse was witnessed by millions across North America. People couldn't take their eyes off the sky. Turns out some did so without proper protection.
It's hard when you're in the moment. Everybody can make a mistake and get some exposure.
The Ontario Association of Optometrists says it received 118 cases of reported eye complications following the celestial event.
Most of the reported cases were for mild irritated eyes that would have resolved after a few days.
She says no reports of permanent damage is a sign most did heed the advice from experts. Quebec's health department has documented at least 28 reports of eye damage. Those injuries include inflammation of the cornea, dry eyes, and solar retinopathy, a permanent burn to the retina. While some will heal over time like a sunburn, other injuries can have lasting effects.
What would happen is an area of central vision loss. So you'd almost have a dark or a blind spot, but it's in your central vision.
Dr. Alexis Keeling says there are no reports of eye damage in New Brunswick. Spectators in that province were treated to a very clear total eclipse. Even a quick look up can be significant.
And by looking at the sun, I only mean for about 30 seconds to a minute, can do permanent damage.
Typically, there's a natural deterrent to not look at the bright sun. Not always the case during the astronomical event.
During the eclipse, things are dimmer and you get the double whammy because the pupil is dilating. So you're not only looking at the sun, but you're opening up the defenses, if you will, to the rays to go into the back of the eye and cause more damage.
Doctors say if you do feel any symptoms or think your vision has changed, you should see an eye care specialist as soon as possible. Heather Butts, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the story behind the most expensive item from the Titanic ever sold at auction. Air Canada is temporarily abandoning a new seat selection policy after a groundswell of public pushback. Some customers received notices earlier this month stating the airline would soon charge travelers booked on the lowest fares a fee to change their automatically assigned seats at check-in. Under the old policy, picking another available seat was free. A gold pocket watch recovered from the body of the richest man on board the Titanic has fetched a record-breaking price. Worn by John Jacob Astor IV, the 14-karat gold timepiece sold for more than $2 million Canadian dollars at auction and was expected to go for not more than $260,000 Canadian. It's the highest amount ever paid for a single item from the Titanic, which hit an iceberg on April 14th, 1912. A small but mighty Canadian town is on the verge of smashing a Guinness World Record for the biggest game of dinosaur dress-up.
It was overwhelming, but it was really exciting that so many people jumped on board. But I couldn't believe the turnout.
About 3,000 people decked out in dino costumes descended on Drumheller, Alberta. That far surpasses the previous record high of 252 people set in Los Angeles in 2019. The final tally on the ultimate prehistoric challenge should be known later this week. After the break, unearthing mysteries of the past.
In 1750, they built the walls, and they really lasted to the end of the 7 Years' War, so by about 1762-63.
The hunt for historical evidence of archaeological remains in Halifax. Archaeologists are pushing to preserve the rich history of Halifax. A 250-year-old wall that once surrounded the city has long puzzled local academics and history buffs who are now searching for remnants underground. The once colonial cornerstone in the British Empire has also inspired history to be weaved into current curriculum. Here's CTV's Paul Hollingsworth.
Archaeologist Jonathan Fowler is using ground-penetrating radar to search for historic evidence of the massive wall that surrounded Halifax more than 250 years ago.
In 1750, they built the walls, and they really lasted to the end of the 7 Years' War, so by about 1762-63.
Fowler believes remnants of the 18th century rampart still exist underground in the downtown core.
What we're trying to do is find archaeological remains of the old defensive wall.
Using modern technology, Fowler is closing in on some clues.
Where the posts of the wall were set side by side.
According to historian Blair Bede, the wall represents a long-forgotten chapter in history.
That stirs the imagination and also the curiosity. What was it all for?
In the 1700s, Halifax was a cornerstone in the British Empire. A wall was needed to protect this asset.
The Mi'kmaq were allies of the French, and the English were not welcome. And they were also expecting the French to attack as the French had attacked them before.
This is more than just curiosity by Jonathan Fowler. Searching for these walls is part of the academic curriculum at St. Mary's University.
The early inhabitants of Halifax lived in a defended community, like a lot of early communities were.
Combining local history with archaeology, Fowler hopes to find physical evidence to create a teachable moment and remind people what this city looked like a long time ago. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
And that's a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.